Welcome to the Deep Dive. We're here to unpack interesting ideas, help you get a handle on complex stuff, whether you're prepping for something specific or just, curious.
Exactly. And today we're diving into something really fundamental, how we go from just having ideas floating around in our heads to actually, well, shaping the world.
Sounds big. So, what's the framework we're looking at?
We've been looking at this really neat concept from Culhane, structured around stages. Thinking, then thinking out loud, moving to thinking out louder, and finally, the really active part, thinking out loudest.
Okay, thinking out loud, louder, loudest. Let's
Yeah,
let's break that down. So, thinking that's just internal, right? Ideas, concepts in your head.
pretty much.
Yeah.
Your own internal monologue, the concept's forming. Then thinking out loud is that first step of making it external somehow.
How so? Like talking it through.
Yeah, talking or maybe sketching, writing it down, giving it some form outside your own mind. Our sources talk about um, mental maps.
Mental maps, like
Yeah.
how we personally see the world.
Exactly. And how you interpret your own mental map really colors your experience.
Well,
Whether you see your commute as a drag or maybe even find parts of it interesting, it's your internal picture.
right, that makes sense. And this thinking out loud, it can also be about describing what is, like mapping your current reality. You mentioned the Amazai people using GIS.
Yes, that's a great example from the material. They're using Geographic Information Systems, GIS, to essentially map their history, their land, their current situation.
So they're taking their collective understanding
Their shared mental map, if you like.
and making it visible, putting it out there with data.
Precisely. It's a really powerful way to externalize a shared perspective, a crucial step.
Okay. And what about that other idea, the geographical vitae? How does that fit into thinking out loud?
Ah, that's more personal.
Hmm.
It's about looking back at the places you've lived, the environments you've been in, and mapping out how they've sort of shaped you.
Like charting your own geographical journey and its impact.
Yeah, creating a personal story of place. It's making your internal connection to place external, understandable.
Okay, so we have internal thoughts, then making them external. What's next? Thinking out louder. How's that different?
Thinking out louder is really about dissemination, taking those externalized thoughts and spreading them more widely. Think traditional ways, storytelling, carving, singing, dancing,
Art, music, performance.
right? The ways communities have always shared ideas and perspectives, and then, of course, more modern mass media, film, TV, radio, amplifying those messages even further.
Got it. Sharing the externalized thought with a broader audience. But the big leap seems to be to thinking out loudest. What's the core difference there?
This is where it gets really exciting, I think. Thinking out loudest isn't just about showing or telling anymore. It's about doing. It's about actively engaging in what the sources call participatory community design and development.
Okay, participatory. So involving people.
Yeah.
And design and development. Actually building stuff.
Exactly. You're moving from representation to actual world building, using those ideas as a blueprint for change.
And this is where the digital tools really come into play, like digital twinning.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
This is a game changer. Digital twinning, simulations. These let us pre-visualize potential futures.
Visualize.
Yeah, create these incredibly detailed, realistic digital models of, say, a neighborhood or an ecosystem, and then you can test things out.
Like a virtual sandbox for the real world.
That's a perfect way to put it. You can simulate the impact of, I don't know, adding bike lanes or building a flood barrier or changing land use.
And see what might happen before you actually dig anything up or spend any money.
Precisely. You test scenarios. And crucially, this isn't just for experts. The loudest part involves the community.
How so?
Well, this pre-visualization, this sandbox, becomes a tool for discussion. The community can see the options, understand the potential trade-offs, and then collectively choose the best path forward. It informs the participatory design process.
Okay, that makes sense. And a lot of this relies on geospatial technology, right? Can you unpack geospatial for us a bit?
Sure. At its core, geospatial data is just information tied to a specific location on Earth. Anything you can put on a map.
Like addresses or GPS coordinates or the boundaries of a park.
Exactly. And this kind of world building we're discussing takes that data and uses it in simulations, games, digital twins, basically tools to help us understand and interact with spatial relationships, how places work, how we affect them.
The sources mentioned a whole suite of tools: QGIS, Blender GIS, Unity, Roblox, Spatial.io, Cesium Ion. Sounds pretty techy.
It can be, but many are becoming much more accessible.
Yeah.
And they each do different things. QGIS, for instance, is great for the fundamental mapping and data management, like those Moroccan villagers mapping water resources. It's often free, open source.
Okay, so QGIS for the map data. What about, say, Blender GIS?
Blender is known for 3D modeling. So
Okay.
Blender GIS lets you take that map data from QGIS and turn it into a 3D visualization. Suddenly you can see the terrain, the buildings.
Mm-hmm.
Really helpful for planning infrastructure or understanding land use visually.
Right, brings it to life. And Unity or Roblox, those sound like game engines.
They are. And that's powerful for creating interactive simulations. Imagine walking through a virtual model of your town under different climate scenarios. You can experience the potential changes, not just see them on a map. It makes it much more real for people.
Wow. Yeah, that immersive aspect, I can see how that would engage people. And Spatial.io and Cesium Ion.
Spatial.io is more about creating shared virtual spaces for collaboration. Think virtual reality meeting rooms, where people can gather around a digital model, point things out, discuss options together, even if they're physically far apart.
So virtual town hall meetings, almost.
Kind of, yeah. And Cesium Ion is really good at handling huge global-scale geospatial data and creating compelling web-based visualizations. Great for storytelling with maps, showing changes over large areas or timescales.
It really feels like the open source and free options here could be, well, democratizing, giving communities tools they might not have had access to before.
That's a key point in the materials. Absolutely. It lowers the barrier to entry. It means community groups, smaller towns, marginalized populations can potentially use these powerful methods for planning and advocating for their own futures.
It's not just tech for tech's sake, then. It's connecting geography, planning, community work.
Exactly. It's inherently interdisciplinary. Understanding how space, people, and environment interact and how we can shape that interaction positively.
So let's circle back to that participatory community design and development. What does that really mean on the ground?
It means moving away from the old model, where experts or authorities make plans for a community. Instead, it's about involving residents actively from the very beginning, identifying needs together, brainstorming solutions, using these visualization tools together.
So the core question driving this is,
It seems to be, how can we use these technologies, geospatial, digital twins, world building, to genuinely empower communities, to give them a real seat at the table, maybe even the head of the table, when it comes to planning for sustainability and their future.
and you mentioned bridging urban-rural divides.
Yeah, because these tools can make sophisticated planning accessible, even if you don't have a huge municipal planning department. If you have internet access and people willing to learn, you can start engaging in these ways. Though we also need to think about digital equity, of course.
Good point. Are there examples where this thinking out loudest approach has really made a difference? The sources mentioned Medellin.
Medellin, Colombia is a classic example often cited. They used GIS extensively, but crucially, coupled it with deep community engagement to understand problems. Co-designed solutions like cable cars, connecting informal settlements, improved public spaces. It was part of a major transformation.
From dangerous city to, well, much more livable and innovative.
Right, and the amazing people we mentioned earlier, they're using these tools not just to record the past, but to actively plan their future development based on their own needs and vision, taking control of the narrative.
That's powerful. And the geographical CV idea is that also thinking out loudest.
I'd say it's a personal application, yeah. You're using the tools to actively build an understanding of your own spatial story, which could absolutely inform how you choose to live or advocate for change in your environment. It's building your own world, in a sense.
And then there's 3D printing, making the digital physical.
Yes. Imagine printing a tactile map for community planning, or a model of a proposed wind turbine, or a prototype tool for an ecological restoration project. It makes the digital tangible, testable, discussable in a very direct way.
It feels like this whole process from thinking to loudest isn't something you do just once.
No, definitely not. The sources emphasize the iterative nature, like science itself. The world changes, communities evolve, our understanding improves, so you have to keep visualizing, testing, building, getting feedback, and refining. It's a continuous cycle.
A constant process of envisioning, trying, learning, adapting.
Exactly. Thinking out loudest isn't a final state. It's an ongoing engagement with shaping the world around us.
So we've journeyed from quiet internal thoughts all the way to this idea of collaborative, tech-enabled world building. It's quite a conceptual leap.
It really is. But it highlights the power we have when we combine visualization, seeing possibilities, with participation, deciding and acting together.
It feels like a pathway, using these tools and concepts for anyone listening to move beyond just, consuming information to actually being an agent of change.
That's the hope, I think, that these tools and this way of thinking can empower people to actively shape the places and issues they care about.
So here's something to think about. Consider a place you know well, or an issue that matters to you. How could these ideas, world building, geospatial storytelling, digital twins, community engagement be used there? Not just to imagine a better future, but to start actively building it. Maybe check out some of those tools we mentioned: QGIS, Blender, Unity, Cesium Ion, Spatial.io, Roblox Studio. Many are free to start exploring your own thinking out loudest.